recently I've been in this weird space where I'm finding it hard to find anything to care about. Now, I'm not saying that as if like, oh, I don't care about life in like a suicidal way or even a homicidal way, right? I'm not saying it like that at all. I'm saying it like in my real life, off the camera, off the internet, there's not much to care about, right? Besides just surviving and maybe achieving something on like YouTube kind of world, right? But even that I'll get into in a minute. But even as I scroll down my timeline on YouTube, I find it doesn't have any substance to it, right? Because I'm only using YouTube as an example because I don't use social media anymore, right? I have it, but I don't use it. So when people introduce the idea of brain rot and they put it purely down to the TikTok and Instagram factor, no, it's a lot more deeper than that. And YouTube is in that as well, right? Because as a child of the 90s, I can definitely tell you the difference in what the internet had to offer back then to what it has to offer now. Even just your day-to-day UI interactions, right? Let's put it like that, right? What you use, how you use it, all of that is another subject, right? And I'm babbling off the matter that I started on, right? I'm finding it hard to care about anything, right? And I'm not saying that like, oh, he feels no pain, right? You know, there's an old Ready to Rumble boxing, right? There's this guy, he's like, I feel no pain, right? That comes to my mind quite often, right? I'll put that clip in. I feel no pain. But anyway, yeah, it's not like I don't feel any pain at all, but it's that I'm finding it hard to find things to care about, right? Maybe it's an age thing, maybe it's a psychological thing, right? Maybe it's just a mood swing kind of thing, right? Which is a bit mood swing. Do you know what I mean? But like everyone gets it, like sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Now I know like countrywide, everybody's got these kind of big issues they're supposed to be caring about now because the TV tells them to, but I don't watch TV, I don't listen to the radio, I get my news secondhand from YouTubers basically, right? Because I know the danger of succumbing to public programming, the media, what the media tells you should be caring about, what you should be focusing on, right? Not just because I had like a upbringing that is kind of dubious of those kind of things, but I also had a little bit of insider of the industry kind of thing. Like I know what goes on in the music industry kind of thing, and I know a little bit about what happens in media. If you don't know, I did music technology as a foundation degree, so I got to move about in a few different places, all right? But that's not to say that's my only reason. The biggest reason is propaganda, of course, right? You're supposed to choose what you want to feed your mind, right? Not have someone else choose it for you. So back to that thing of not having anything to care about. It's not that I don't care about anything, because I probably do, but I'm just not really in that space to actually be able to articulate what I actually care about. But it just speaking now is making me aware of how much I don't care about. It's like, so let me just rewind a couple of steps, right, and just get my thoughts together. I've noticed on YouTube, in my particular algorithm, and I'll be honest, my algorithm's absolutely shitty, and my YouTube channel is shitty too, right? We'll get into that a little bit later in the conversation, but I've noticed on my algorithm recently a lot of younger black people, especially on the continent of Africa, right? Because I'm English and I barely like see any black YouTubers like that in my algorithm, so I kind of make it a point when I do see one, I kind of check them out and see what they're about, what they're thinking, what they're saying, what they're talking about. But particularly from South Africa, there's quite a wave of very nihilistic young black men, right, in particular, and it's not like they shouldn't be that kind of way, because they are very, I'm not saying they're woke, but they're very aware of their situation, and I'm also very aware of their situation kind of thing, right? Just in terms of like politics and poverty, and of course like the black and white divide across the world and that. The few of them that I see on YouTube are very nihilistic, right? And it's not really their fault, because I felt that way too. I have a sneaky suspicion that they're around my age or a little bit younger. So when I say this, I mean it positively, right? The way that they're talking currently with the whole nihilistic worldview kind of black pill, it's a phase, right? It's not going to go away forever, because once, it's like the Matrix, isn't it? Once you take the pill, you can't go back. Once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep, right? So yes, now you are aware of the cruelty of reality, like how bad things really are. But the space that you're in right now, and I know, of course, because they're YouTubers, they talk about it more because it pays, isn't it? More and more people keep clicking on these depressing type subjects. They'll make more and more depressing subjects, right? Because that's just how the YouTube gods work, right? We all work for YouTube, even though we're all individuals. We work for the algorithms. Even if you're a social media guy or girl, you work for the algorithm, right? But anyway, why I've noticed this in myself a lot, and it's like under the surface of my mind is kind of concerning me, more and more as I go on, like day to day, that I can't find anything to care about. Now, I don't say that as if, oh, I'm supposed to be feeling something where like, oh, I should be like a social justice warrior and just picking out causes that benefit me to care about. No, I say that as in I've reached that age, and maybe it's not an age thing, maybe it's a maturity thing, or just an experience kind of thing, or maybe it's just down to accumulating information where I've acknowledged that horrible bread of life, right? That we don't know why we're here, we don't know why we was born, but we do know we're gonna die, right? And then you get to decide whatever fillings you're putting in between there, kind of thing, right? But I've made peace with the reality that we don't know why we are here. I don't know, you can jump into the whole esoteric and religious, spiritual ideas. We'll put that all over here in one zip file, right? One category of reasoning, right? But the truth is, all of that kind of stuff on this side is subjective, right? The foundation of it is not truth. The foundation of all of that is just perspective and ideas, right? From demigods to demiurges, right? It's all just perspectives and ideas, no provable, hard-hitting facts, right? Just try to interpret what I'm saying the best you can, right? And then do what you will with the information. Once you understand and make peace with those two serious factors of life, that you're born for no reason and you're probably going to die for no reason, and you don't know why either of those things are going to happen, once you make peace with that, you find it very easy to slip into this nihilistic kind of black pill hole, right, so to speak, right? But it's not entirely a hole, which I'll get to metaphorically in a minute, where it's very easy to not care about life, right? Not that you don't care about your personal life, because you still feel pain, you still feel pleasure, you probably don't want to die, but you're gonna die anyway, right? All of that shit, it's so morbid already, like I'm not really doing a good job of conveying this sentiment. Let's start again. Life is meaningless. Now, I'm not saying this in a, oh, it means nothing, so you should just kill yourself, you shouldn't care about anything. But I'm saying it in a way where it's very frank. You can ascribe or assign meaning to life, right? If you choose to. You could say, these flowers give me meaning. Family gives me meaning. Pursuit of X, Y, and Z gives me meaning. But the truth is, why I say life has no meaning is because we don't know why. We assume why, we assert why, religiously, spiritually, even logically we assert reasons why, but we don't know for sure why, right? You don't know why you was born. You don't know why you have to die, but you have to, right, which is a fact of life, make peace with those two things, right? So let's just say they're your bread of the sandwich that is life, right? Once you understand that, and you don't try to avert your eyes from the truth, and be like, oh, I know I'm going to die, but I kind of don't want to think about it, so let me just entertain myself, right? Once you actually look at it for what it is, your options in your subway of your mind, right? Or your subway of the universe, I don't know why I use a subway, but like, your options for your things that you fill your life with start to narrow more and more and more and more, right? Because you realize all of these things don't really matter. You look inside, right, metaphorically or metaphysically, to try and like justify in your soul, if that exists, right, why these things are in your subjective interpretations. You go and you look in religious ideas, the spiritual ideas, and the esoteric and exoteric ideas, right? You go and you search and you look for information, but the more you start to learn is the more you realize we're all just humans and nobody actually knows, right? Everyone's given a subjective view. Even if we study things down to its most logical, frank, data set driven ideas, right? This means this because of this. It's still our interpretation of the data, right? And I'm saying all this to say, there is nowhere to turn to, right? There is nowhere to run. There's no escaping that, right? So if you can make peace with that and just like literally vibe out with the fact that, hey, this is a short glimpse in history, right? I'm going to be dead longer than I'm going to be alive, right? If you can make peace with that, you get to another kind of fork in the road, like kind of Matrix moment, right? Where you get the red pill or black pill choice again now. What do you do now that you know the information? Do you ascribe meaning to life by picking these assortment of flavors and things you could put in your bread? Or do you decide life really doesn't matter, right? And I don't really need any flavorings or all these kinds of things in between my bread, right? Because I know the bread is there. And the bread is sustenance in itself, right? You can decide. But for me, I find myself very recently and quite often, partially because of this whole close deaths kind of thing, feeling that nothing matters, right? And it's not that nothing matters in the sense of I might as well just die, or I might as well just go out and do some crazy shit because it doesn't matter kind of thing. No, I'm not saying either of those things because I don't generally think like that, right? Now, yes, I've had my moments on both sides of that kind of fulcrum kind of thing, but that's not, as an adult, that's not where my mind is, right? I've gone past the point of letting other things and other people and traditional ideas dictate to me what should matter. And because I've kind of transcended that, or so to say, like a Dragon Ball Z term, ascended that kind of low-level mortal thinking, things don't matter to me. Like, what the country is worried about right now based on what the news is telling them or the radio is telling them don't matter to me. Now, I'm not special, but I'm just not buying in, right? Where at the same time, because I don't buy into all of these set in stone ideas of you're supposed to think this means this, that means that, and I acknowledge that all of these things that I'm supposed to, and it's supposed to matter, and it's supposed to mean something, are all subjective, I'm free, right? But at the same time, I'm restrained by the rules of reality, right? So I know this doesn't make much sense, right? But follow me, right? So, in my life, I was about to do all my life I had to fight, right? One of those kind of things, right? But in my life, I found, right, there's been multiple things that hold me back. It's mostly people, right? Let's just be real, right? It's mostly other people that haven't acknowledged that fact of life. So they're still holding on to all of these tedious little things in reality that they think matter, but they don't truly matter, right? So they go about making other people's lives hard because they think it matters. But anyway, what I would describe my experience of reaching this point, how I would describe it, is an episode of Animatrix, right? It's called The Runner or The Sprinter. I'm not quite sure which one it's called, right? But I'm going to lay out the premise of this episode, right? Then I'll explain to you how I interpret that over my life, right? So in this Animatrix episode, there's this black guy who's a sprinter, right? He's a runner, maybe 100 meters, maybe 200 meters. I can't remember the exact, right? But he's a runner. And of course, he's a cartoon because it's anime basically, right? Animatrix. Right? So it's a side story to the main Matrix story. The guy is an Olympian, we'll say, right? He's a track runner. And as you're watching the episode, it starts out, the guy's just doing his thing and his friend's talking to him and he's going like this, right? And he's talking to me saying, there's no way you can do this, right? And he's imposing all of these limitations on this runner, right? And he's saying to him, you can't beat this time, no one's ever done it, it's dangerous, all of these things are going to happen to you if you try to break this limit, right? If you try to ascend, if you go into the metaphorical hyperbolic time chamber and train, right, is basically what he's saying. Don't do this, right? Now, because this guy, this runner, is like, he's not awake per se, because this is part of the whole interpretation, right? He's just determined and focused on something, and he knows in his mind, I can do this, right? I can run this time, I can make this a reality. This world record is nothing because I know it's possible to beat this, right? I have what it takes. Because he thinks like that, he's being watched, right? And he's not just being watched by his friend. You could say his friend's playing like the role of a handler, so to speak, right? But he's also being watched by the agents, because it's the Matrix, isn't it? Right? So he's being watched by all these various different people, and they're keeping an eye on him, not because he's a bad guy, but because he's able to see past these limitations that they've designed for him, right? Societally, psychologically. And they can see that little glimpse in his eye that he's willing to try and fucking break this record, right? So they're watching him, and they're doing all of these things to deter him from actually trying, right? It's psychological warfare, right? Which is like why I'm laying this out for you, how I interpret this reality or my own reality, right? Because it's all metaphorical. The guys that wrote these stories, well, the woman that wrote the whole Matrix, it was all metaphysical and metaphorical or rhetoric, right? Yeah, which that's another conversation, because I probably never use that in the correct context. But anyway, it's down to your interpretation, right? I'll put it like that. So they're all watching this guy, and he's about to do this race, right? And as he does this race, the race starts. And he starts running, right? He's doing his normal run. And other racers are running with him as well, right? And then something clicks in him, right? And he starts dusting, right? And time slows down. His muscles start to mash up like tearing because he's imposing his will on the reality that he's in, right? Which isn't a real reality because he's in the Matrix, right? And as he's running and his body's starting to deteriorate, right? You can look at that. You can interpret that how you want as well. There's another nice little metaphor inside of there. But as he's running down the track and his body's starting to deteriorate, the other runners, the other racers on the track, right, his competitors, are all starting to turn into agents as well, right? The guys beside him, the guys behind him, right? And the agents are overtaking him, which is obviously a metaphor for the programming of the system. The system is anybody that can get his claws in, right? Which is why I don't listen to or entertain certain ideas from certain sources, right? Because once you accept it, you are now a tool, right? Whether you like it or not, you perpetuate the same ideas and you look at life and you look at other human beings in a way that you probably wouldn't have if you weren't influenced, right? So that's a metaphor off to one side. So the guy starts running and breaking his speed barrier kind of thing, so everything's slowing down. Now in his eyes, right, in his mind, if you put it like that, or the actual Matrix scene, he starts to see all these numbers come out of the, like, just start popping up out of the ground, right? Because in the Matrix they have the little code, it's binary code, but in the cartoon version it's numbers, right? So he starts to see all these things, but he's not actually looking at any of these things, right? He's just trying to run, right? And his body's mashing up and the agents are chasing after him and about to grab him, right? And then just as he's about to like awaken, right, or hit that point where he breaks the barrier, he has like a, you could call it like a psychological breakdown, right? And he trips and he rolls, bam, 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 on the track, right? And he mashes himself up. But at that point, right, which you can also interpret as a certain stage in life, right? You get up, you're willing to try, you run, you hit the wall, you fail, you fall down, you learn, right? At that point, all of the agents, all the people are watching him and they're like, yeah, actually, we still got to watch this guy, but our shit worked. We done what we needed to do to stop him from getting to where he's trying to go, right? So because what he done was mad. I can't actually remember if he does break the time. I think he might even break the time, right? And he just trips after the race. I can't remember. But anyway, what he done was mad, basically. And because he attempted to push the limit so far, he exposed the whole fucking thing because everyone like jumped up like, no, we need to do something, right? Because he's exposing the whole fucking thing. So he gets smashed up because he pushes his body to such a far extent. His body's broken down, right? And then they cut to another scene of him like in a wheelchair, right? And they've got his legs and everything screwed in. And they've got this nurse basically pushing him down the hallway. Now, you could look at that like it's his body that's been broken. But really what happened was his mind was broken, right? Which is like I keep saying, it's very metaphorical, specifically because he's a black man and he's running a race, right? But basically, they've all like kind of like we've fucked him up, we got him, right? He's not gonna break out of the Matrix kind of thing. So as they're rolling him down the corridor, and he's like the story is about to end, right? He starts to levitate, like not really levitate, like he starts to just psychologically break the barriers, the Matrix, and start to get out of the chair like he's gonna run. So he's breaking the screws, breaking the wheelchair to stand up, and basically, metaphorically, he is free, right? But he's still in the Matrix, right? He's still confined by the rules of reality. But what he just done twice, right, lets you know that it's possible. Now, why did I get all that long explanation? To be fair, I don't fucking know why I told you that story, right? But when I look at that story and interpret that in my own life, right, I see that, like, the people, the things, the situations, the goings on in life that, oh, woe is me, everybody's trying to stop me kind of shit. I've been in that place. I've been at the point of breaking the barrier. I've been at the point of seeing the numbers, right? And I've been at the point of being in the wheelchair, right? So I can say it makes sense to me in my life when I interpret it, right? I don't want to get too heavy on this subject because then we're going to go down the whole, oh, is gang stalking a thing, right? Is secret societies and all this shit, right? It all is, right? But like I just said, I'm aware of the reality, they're aware of the reality, but we don't need to talk about it, right? Because what's understood ain't got to be spoken on. So, when I look at that as a metaphor, coming on the other side of that, you now know that all the shit that exists inside of that, we're using the matrix as a metaphor, right? Not in an Andrew Tate kind of way, right? Not in a red pill, blue pill, black pill kind of way. We're just talking systematically because it's the easiest way to describe it, right? Now that you've seen the high of what's possible and you started at the low, right? You now know all of these other things, all these other ideas don't truly matter. So you are now back in a state of nihilism. But you have a choice now to say, because none of this matters, right? I can just be a Neo and just keep fucking up the system every step that I take, right? Or I could just chill, right? And just pretend that I never saw. You could be a cipher, yeah? You could pretend and go back in the system and pretend that you're asleep. So in life, I see myself like that runner in that Animatrix episode, right? And not in a big-headed way, not even I want to be the main character or the hero way. If anything, I look at myself more of an anti-hero or an agent of change, right? Because that suits my personality better. But principally, the reason I find it hard to care is because I don't buy into what I'm told I'm supposed to care about, right? Now, that for me, societally, is problematic, right? Because it gives you the black sheep and you kind of tired and people are like, oh, we don't know if he's going to keep his mouth shut about what's going on. So we kind of got to watch him and we kind of got to make sure we can interfere and steer his life in a certain way, right? Which is obvious, right? I'm not bragging, I'm not boasting, but I've always been a talented kid, right? And I'm kind of willing to say and do things normal people ain't willing to do, right? But I take risks. So that makes me not a target per se, because like I just said, right, once you acknowledge the bread of life, right, people can't really fuck with you, right? Because what can you take? If you don't care, what can I take from you? I'm going to take your life. Well, I'm going to lose my life anyway one day, right? Do you know what I mean? I'm going to take this person's life that's close to you. Well, your person's going to get their life taken one day anyway. So, you know what I mean? You're going to feel everything you want me to feel eventually. And I don't believe in karma. I don't believe in, no, I'll let God handle it kind of shit. Like, I'll take care of business. But the things in between the bread, right? The bread, right? The why, right? If you can make peace with that every night knowing, hey, all of the shit's going away one day, right? Could be tonight, could be tomorrow, could be next day. Like, it doesn't matter. It's going away. You get to decide then, right? To not like, I'm not telling you, oh, you get to take your life into your own hands, which you do, right? Because it's all a matter of information. If you accumulate more information, then you literally are more powerful, right? It's not a fact that knowledge is power. It's applied knowledge that becomes power, right? You can regurgitate and retain as much information as you want. You could be a library-minded person, but if you don't have action behind that knowledge, if you ain't willing to take the risk, right? If you ain't willing to do the unpredictable, then your knowledge is not powerful, right? You're restrained by your knowledge, right? But in that matter, don't take that too seriously. It's not a matter of just finding things that you want to achieve that you think that's going to give your life meaning, because it doesn't. At the end of the day, I can tell you as someone that's done things and achieved things that normal people haven't, that it doesn't mean that you mean anything. If anything, it puts you more of that, it gives you a further back picture of reality, and you're like, actually, even though I've achieved this, even though I've done that, it didn't really matter, right? And then that's a whole nother thing, right? But what I'm trying to say is this. Yes, I find it hard to care about anything, right? And I understand it, right? I know why I'm like that. Because I realized that I had to relinquish the want for control over things, right? And not in a slave master morality kind of thing, like you dismiss what you cannot have. Not just that, right? Because that's encompassed into it. But you dismiss what you cannot control. Now, if you dismiss what you cannot control on small matters, then I suggest you dismiss what you cannot control on large matters. Chiefly, the fact that you cannot control the outcomes of life. Why you're here, why you die, right? If you relinquish control on that, you can better enjoy the meat in the sandwich. Pause. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? So, not only can you do that, you can provide other people with perspectives on what they can achieve inside of the bread. Well, on bread too, right? Anyway, I don't know how I got down this road, right? Like, when I switched on this camera, I knew I didn't know what I wanted to talk about, but I knew if I just started talking, eventually I'd start to get like, I formulate a kind of a working thesis, right, of where this conversation is going to go, right? Because I just used the Matrix or the Animatrix as like a key feature of this conversation, I also want to slightly break that shit down so you don't get trapped in that, because that is also a psychological trap, to get caught in this child of destiny kind of chosen one syndrome, which I call it, right? Because that's a part of the programming. Now, as somebody that's like survived some serious shit, right? And I'll be talking on the camera, like I can't just say what I like. I do want to say what I want to say, right? But I still have that psychological gagging order where I can't actually talk about everything out in the open just yet, right? And even saying it like that, it raises too many like Metal Gear Solid. Huh? I want to help you deprogram your mind from not only being able to break these limits and being aware that you have all of these handlers and psychological manipulators around you trying to like discourage you from achieving what you want to achieve. I also want you to not worry about anything, right? Not worry about them, not worry about the outcomes of life, not worry about the outcomes of the activities you're currently doing, right? Because it doesn't matter. But the fact that it doesn't matter should give you that sort of breezy, superhuman power kind of vibe, right? This shit doesn't matter. So I'm going to cut through it like butter, because there's only two things people can tackle you with, right? They can tackle you with psychological pressure while you're on Earth, right? And they can take your life away. But if we acknowledge the first principle, which is you have no control over that, then there's nothing they can take away from you, right? I don't want to encourage you to be suicidal or homicidal, right? I just want you to think, because you don't understand why life is the way it is, you don't need to accept anybody's interpretation of why they think life is the way it is, right? Because it's not a fact. So if you decide what life means for you, say to yourself, that is good enough.